Ben Brewer has lived in Missoula since 2007. He is grateful for his family, including his wife Beth and his 2-year-old son Jack, and to a lesser extent his dog and cat, even though they frequently wake up his son. Ben moved here for a girl and ended up with a marriage, a mortgage, a child, and a degree, and a job in a cubicle. So he is basically living the American dream and feels very lucky to be doing it in such a wonderful and welcoming place such as Missoula, Montana. Please welcome Ben Brewer.
This was about 20 years ago, the summer between 10th and 11th grade, and so I was home alone. It was summer. I was sitting in my house and watching TV, and just out of the blue, I felt like my skull dropped out from the back of my head, and I was being pulled out through that hole. It was like right here, and I was being pulled back, and everything looked like in a Hitchcock movie where like they zoom in but pan back or whatever, and I felt like I was being crushed, and it was very scary. I was terrified. I think I was probably shaking. I'm not sure how long that lasted, but luckily my dog was sitting on the couch next to me, and we looked at each other, and he kind of talked me through it, and he did, and it was helpful. And one of the things I realized was that I needed to face my fear, and so I did that, and I came out the other side of this feeling, and I pulled out of that, and all of a sudden, things were really amazing, and everything was just beautiful and magical and bright. It was wonderful, and everything was imbued with meaning. For example, the next day, I went to go play pickup soccer with my brother, and we went to the field and played for a while, and then I took off my clothes and started running around the field. And next to the field, I was in my boxers, but I was otherwise clothesless. And there was a row of sprinklers next to the field we were playing on, and it looked like this wall of water, and it was full of meaning, and what I needed to do was get to the other side. I needed to break through that wall. So I ran like full on and dove through that wall and skidded across the grass on the other side. And I got up and I was just covered with grass, but I'd broken through because that wall had meaning. And then after that, there was this team of 10-year-olds practicing their soccer, and they were all like lined up practicing headers, where the coach would throw them a ball and they'd head it and then go to the back of the line. So I jogged over, covered in grass, basically no clothes, and got in line and went up to waited my turn. And well, this was another funny thing about this time, is that the other thing that I had realized was that everyone else was already there. They were already feeling this, or on this plane, this new plane. And so I was the last one there. So everyone knew already what was going on. So I looked at the coach, and the coach looked at me, and we knew. And he threw me a ball, and I headed it, and then and then I ran off. So another funny thing that was happening at this time was we had a French exchange student who happened to be staying with us then. And so my parents I lived in Seattle. I grew up in Seattle, so my parents recommended taking him out on a tour. So I went to the museum. My parents had recommended going to the museum. And so we went there. But rather than look at art, we went straight to the cafeteria, and I ordered us a plate of cucumbers. And on the way there, we had passed a guy who was like passing out free condoms, like out of a grocery bag, which I took because everything had meaning. There was a reason he was doing that. And so when the lady slid the plate of cucumbers over to me, looked at her, because we were on the same plane, and I slid the condoms across the counter to pay for the cucumbers, and then we took the cucumbers and ate them and left the museum. So I also had discovered I could tap into new kind of powers and abilities that I didn't, hadn't experienced before. So like I met up with a couple of my friends from high school at a park. We were hanging out at a park, and there were 3 of us. And I wanted to tell one of them, I wanted to tell her that I deeply loved her, like I was fully in love. But I didn't want to tell it in front of the other girl that was sitting with us. So I'll do it in the microphone. I snapped, and she fell asleep. And then I could tell my friend that I loved her. And I, walking around the city, could see, look at buses, and the images on the buses would move, and things like that. I could change my shape in the mirror. So I had abilities. So I also, around that time, a movie came out called Lone Star, Jonathan Sayles movie starring Matthew McConaughey, and I knew that movie was really important to see. And so one evening, my parents told me we were going to go see Lone Star, and we got in the car, we drove to the movie theater and pulled up, except that the building that we pulled up in front of was not the theater, it was a mental hospital. And while I was figuring that out, my dad had gotten into the back seat and was holding on to me while the nurses and staff, at the hospital came out to put me on the gurney, which they strapped me on, and wheeled me into the hospital. And so picture this, I'm in the hallway, I'm on a gurney down the hall. On the left-hand side is like the solitary cell, like where they just put you to sequester you until they figure out what to do, I guess. And so while I'm on the gurney, which by the way, while I'm on there, I'm like this 10th grade boy. I was trying to seduce the nurse next to me to let me out of here so we can run away together. So in that cell, they had to move the guy who was in that cell out of there to make room for me. So while I'm on that gurney, I see them open the door, and they move that guy out, and that guy is crazy. He's got the hair, that's all matted, and he looks really disoriented and confused, and he's saying things loudly that don't make any sense. And so they moved him out and put me in there. And you might think that that was the point where I might have had a revelation that I was not thinking clearly, but I did not. So flash forward a week, and many pills later, and I left the hospital. And here's what had happened, was that earlier that summer, I had gone camping. I'd gone on a camping trip, and I had gotten giardia, which, for those of you who don't know, giardia is something that makes you poop a lot. And to get rid of that, when I got back, I went to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed me a drug called quinacrine, which is an anti-malarial medication, which isn't really used that much anymore because it can have psychotic reactions. But I think he prescribed it because the one that they were using at the time had heart side effects or something he was worried about. So that is kind of the gist of what happened, and what the revelation, I guess, or this illumination that I had actually was a side effect of chemicals that I took to fix my guts. And so I guess what I learned was that it made it a little difficult to trust things like revelations, because because sometimes your brain can be a sneaky puppet master little fucker. Thank you very much.